I'd start with a few words about the framing of the week, because when you've got this topic, feminism, theatre, activism, it's huge. It's huge. So we needed to find a way to structure it, find a pathway through that over the course of 5 days could make some concrete sense, find some layers in there that together by the end of the week will pull together and give you something to take away that doesn't feel like, well, I've just sat through a week of feminist blancmange. So that was the tactic. And to do this, I went back to the monograph that was published in 2020, Restaging Feminisms, because it was in that monograph that I was inspired to think back to the second wave moment and the feminisms we had then, and how we started to understand them and move them into theatre studies, like I was just saying in the little personal notes just now. And again, I wanted to do it not because I was, like I said before, being nostalgic or something, I want that past because I haven't got such a buoyant present. It wasn't about that. It was about, let's go back and understand how that is now a legacy in the present. And what I'm going to be arguing all week is any looking back is always a looking back to know differently. What have we missed? What have we retained? What can we learn from it? So those pasts and presents are going to connect throughout the week. More recently than that, this was just published last year, I was asked to do an introduction to feminist theatre then and now. The request came through, Elaine, can you do us an introduction in about 5,000 to 6,000 words covering 50 years of feminism and theatre? Oh, yes, that's an easy one. And that's the piece that I've sent you for today, because I thought that actually gives you the landscape that's going to underpin this week. So that's why I sent that one over for this first session. So again, it clarifies how we're looking back to histories, but always connected forward to legacies and what it means for us now in the present. I think just one other note, and then we'll get going on this first lecture, is I don't want to keep repeating myself every time by pointing out I'm talking about the UK, but I am, so I'll just headline it. I'm talking from a UK context, because when I talk about the feminisms or other developments, obviously they're going to resonate differently, even within the Western framework. What things are called in the US might be the same as the UK, and they're certainly going to resonate differently for you. So just always remember, Elaine is talking UK context. I'm not trying to universalize the concepts and approaches that I'm talking about. So I'll put that note up front, okay? And also tell me if I'm not loud enough. I guess that particularly relates to online especially, and also if I'm blocking the screen in any way. I can kind of shuft about on my Dalek chair here and find other positions if I'm not audible enough or I'm blocking. Okay, so just interrupt me if you need to. Right, so now we see if all this technology really does work together. So this first lecture then, objecting to objectification and the founding of an alternative feminist theatre tradition. So this is really doing the spade work for today that sets us up for the week. So I'm taking us back to that moment to explore the feminisms of the second wave and how, in the UK context, I will stop saying that all the time, we came to develop a feminist theatre, culture and tradition. Okay? So I thought that, sorry, I'm just going to move this slightly closer, otherwise I can't see my own writing on the slides without upsetting anything, I hope. Hang on. So I thought, is that okay? Can people see? Yeah? I felt we needed some kind of working definition of feminism to begin with. And I wanted to choose one from a theatre context. So I went back to Jill Dolan's Feminist Spectator as Critic, which was published in 1988, which was one of the seminal pioneering texts in finding feminist approaches to theatre, working with the feminist dynamics from the movement at large and bringing those into the sphere of theatre studies. So I went back to Jill's definition for us, coming from a theatre context, and you have it there, and how she defined it back at that time was as follows: feminism begins with a keen awareness of exclusion from male cultural, social, sexual, political, and intellectual discourse. It is a critique of prevailing social conditions that formulate women's position as outside of the dominant male discourse. So that keen awareness of being in the margins, of being women's position being outside the dominant male discourse. And of course, then if you're talking about a keen awareness of that marginalized position, you're also then indicating the need for it to change, to transform. It isn't just a statement, it's a statement that calls for action, for transformation. So then you've got the issue of, okay, things need to change, then what needs to change? And that critical question, how are things to change? And of course, given the diversity of feminism, of feminisms, as I will come to call them shortly, you know, that's not a straightforward matter. There are going to be different views. Yes, there are going to be synergies, but there are also going to be differences to negotiate. So let's look first, keeping the idea of those negotiations in mind, about the origins and influences and developments of this keen awareness. And that's where we have to recollect that the making of a feminist movement came about because of other protests, radical politics, particularly those coming in the 1960s. We've got the influences there of the Black, You Left, anti-Vietnam movements over in the States, the student politics, 1968 in France, writings on the Cultural Revolution, China, or the Algerian Revolution, when one thinks of Frantz Fanon's writings about that revolution. On the home front in the UK, our left labour movement was already agitating for equal pay, the early signs of that. But when we think of all of those, then we're talking about movements that didn't necessarily put women's issues on that agenda. These are influences, but it's not with women's issues, their needs, uppermost, but it's where the feminist movement takes its inspiration from going forward. And we always talk about this as the second wave movement because the first is considered the suffrage movement of the 19th century. One of the key features of this feminist movement, as many of you from women's studies may certainly know, is the notion of consciousness raising. And I'm just going to explain this because it relates to the emergence of the women's feminist theatre groups at this time. So consciousness raising is a development of that keen awareness, the becoming aware of how personal lives are impacted by a political regime, political context. And in a group, not an individual, but in a group of women, it's possible to share experiences and arrive at a collective consciousness of those experiences. So not as individuals, but as groups. And at this time, many of those groups were organically formed. by women up and down the country getting together, forming their own groups. And that was particularly true of London as the city, and various of the feminist writings that to come out in the 1970s came from those groups meeting together. Actually, I've just kind of become aware of some people are taking images of the slides. Can we say that we're going to share them afterwards? Yeah? Make them available to you. So you don't need to worry if there's something that you want. You'll have it afterwards. Okay? So you don't have to worry, oh, I want that reference. You'll get it, okay? So that's where you start through the group, starting to kind of forge a sense of protest and resistance to the status quo and what needs to change. I recently went back to some of the seminal literature from the 70s, and this one in particular, Juliet Mitchell's Woman's Estate, first published in 1971, and looking at how she was talking about the perception of the groups at that time. And she makes, first of all, the observation about the male perception of those groups, and you've got it in the first block on the slide there, that the male critics dismissed consciousness-raising sessions as group therapy, or as a covert way of maligning and chastising women for moaning again, gossiping their complaints, having a nag. I don't think that's quite gone away somehow. But to counter that, if that's the kind of, way it was, the male perception of that was very dismissive, to counter that, she drew a parallel between the women's consciousness raising and the Chinese revolutionary practice of speaking bitterness. Now, there's not a direct parallel between those contexts because they're culturally, socially incredibly different. But she did make what I came away on a kind of rereading of this, think was a kind of very key point that she made, which goes like this. The first symptom of oppression is the repression of words. The state of suffering is so total and so assumed that is not known to be there. Speak bitterness is the bringing to consciousness of the virtually unconscious oppression. One person's realization of an injustice brings to mind other injustices for the whole group. So it's that idea of, the words aren't even there. You haven't got a name for it, or as Betty Friedan did in the kind of the problem that has no name when she was trying to find the words to describe women's domesticity back in mid-20th century America. It's so repressed you haven't got the words, so it's kind of finding the words come out. And again, we've got a reminder of how important it is that it's a group context. It's kind of a shared. So bringing out those kind of unconscious to become conscious objections to the status quo. And it's the sharing of experiences in that collective mode, the sharing of everyday experiences that brings us to that seminal mantra of the second wave feminist movement. The personal is political. Working through those groups in a non-hierarchical way, there's no leaders, it's that sharing, so everything that's personal that can be shared, and to arrive at a political consciousness of those everyday experiences. And the women's liberation movement at large didn't have its leaders. Well, the press used to sometimes make leaders, but they didn't operate in the way. It's not like having a party that has a leader and a deputy and however many officials and then the underdogs. So it all worked across democratic lines. I said earlier there would be, in terms of what you think needs changing and how you're going to make the changes, you've got synergies and you've also got differences. But in the UK at the time, the feminist movement then was able to agree on 4 demands. And they were for equal pay, equal education and opportunity, 24-hour nurseries, and free contraception and abortion on demand. And those demands were made at the first national conference held by the Women's Liberation Movement in Oxford back in 1970, and it was the first of a series of national conferences lasting until 1978. So it didn't set out to be this first national meeting, it became that, moved into that, and then continued throughout the decade. And I found over the years, I often came back to these 4 demands when I was working with my students. I remember particularly in the 1990s, this was the decade when, you know, it was all Spice Girls and girl power, and my students would be saying, oh, we've got it all now, we don't need feminism anymore, and everything like this. So I used to come back to these demands and put them up, and I said, okay, let's go through them. Let's check, you know, have you got equal pay? No, you know, so it would go on. We've done better in terms of equal education opportunity, but in terms of, say, still now 24-hour, well, we're never going to have 24-hour nurseries, especially as the feminist movement at the time also advocated that they should be state provided. And the UK certainly now has more childcare provision than they did when I had my 2 children, but it's one of the most expensive in Europe. So mothers struggle really hard to be able to finance that care. And yes, we have contraception, and yes, we have abortion, but abortion is frequently under threat, so that the rights of that are constantly being undermined and vulnerable to being taken away. So I say, I always use it with my students, say, okay, Spice Girls, yeah, but look at the list. Nevertheless, back at this time, it's interesting when you go back to the feminist voices, feminist readings from the time, feminist activism from the time, that women had this tremendous energizing sense that they could change the world. It's you know, when you look at documentary footage of that time, there's this incredible, that sense through the groups, through building into a kind of larger movement, it could be possible. But as Juliet Mitchell importantly points out, if that's going to happen, you've got to move not only from the individual, but to the small group, but also to the whole society. And it's that last bit, whole society, where obviously a lot of feminist endeavours over different years and decades come undone. Nevertheless, I thought at this point we would look at what's been described as a spectacular consciousness-raising episode by looking at the feminist protest over the Miss World contest in 1970. It's also going to bring us on to objecting to objectification, and the feminist account of that. It's just a kind of couple of minutes to look at Dear Bob Hope, that was the target of that protest, with his misogynist jokes, and then the feminist account of how it became this spectacular consciousness raising. So instead of just thinking about the women in their private, organically established groups, we have the notion of a collective consciousess raising episode happening in the public sphere. Okay, so now we're going to see if we can make the internet connections work. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, I just say, sorry if when the YouTube comes up, sometimes comes up and has terrible adverts before you get to what you want. So I apologise for whatever YouTube puts up for us. Let's see what we get anyway.
I am very, very happy to be here at this cattle market.
There's a second one to
I'm very, very happy to be here at this cattle market tonight. Moo. No, it's quite a cattle market. I've been back there checking calves. Now, the fight to save our wildlife has many rewards, ladies and gentlemen, not the least of which is getting your wife to wear a cloth coat. I don't want you to think I'm a dirty old man because I never give women a second thought. My first thought covers everything. And we must preserve Ladies and gentlemen, this is a nice conditioning course for Vietnam. I want to tell you, anybody that would try to break up an affair as wonderful as this, with these kind of proceedings and with these wonderful people and wonderful girls from the entire world, have got to be on some kind of dope, ladies and gentlemen, believe me.
A real-life adventurer, one of the stars of Holby City, and a sneak peek at the new Indiana Jones. A real-life adventurer, one of the stars.
The second one from India. That was no, it doesn't want to. Peculiar. Open it. Yeah, now it's. Oh, I will go next this. Yeah. Okay, let me see. I think it's working now. Okay. Is this the right one? This is the right one. Yeah. Okay, let's just put that. Yeah. Okay, so this is the. Now we can see this from the feminist side, what they were trying to do, okay?
I was 26, 27. I was a student, a history student, a mature student. I was the mother of a 4-year-old, and I was immersed in the activities of the women's liberation movement.
With all the talk about independence, it's as well to remember that women are still as keen as ever to be feminine.
We were learning a lot and trying to understand the world we were living in, and we felt angry about a lot of the injustices. I remember going to a meeting with a whole group of other people at the Women's Liberation Workshop offices, and I really don't know where the idea came from, except Miss World, you know, women being judged by their looks and their bodies.
There was no need to look any further than the Albert Hall for Heavenly Falls.
We knew that to demonstrate against Miss World, if we could disrupt the spectacle, as we called it, going into everyone's homes, it would make an impact. We had no quarrel with the contestants. Our argument was with, why do you have to be beautiful and, looked at like this before you get noticed as a woman? There was a sense of exhilaration and excitement that we were making a mark and making ourselves heard. It sort of went to plan. There was a lot of security, much more security than we'd anticipated, and there was a long queue, but we could buy tickets. We dressed up. We wanted to fit into the audience. So we went in with our handbags and our looking good. Inside our handbags we had little objects. We put flour into little scrunchy pieces of paper and flour bombs to flick around. When we were in there, we realised there were groups of women dotted all over the hall. We could see that they were demonstrators like us. You felt, oh my God, I've got to do this. You felt terrified. We planned there would be a football rattle, which would go off at a certain time. We thought when all the candidates were lined up on the stage. The signal came very early because the woman who had the rattle, she got so angry at the jokes that Bob Hope was, which were shocking, and at his general demeanour, and she did rattle early. So we leapt up. It was dark and seeing other women leaping up. I had to climb over people who were horrified at what we were doing. I was certainly determined to get onto that stage and disrupt. Bob Hope, when I first leapt up, I could see that he looked, like that, and what's going on? And she looked absolutely horrified, ran backstage, absolutely terrified, and he took a long time to be persuaded to come back on. I must have got, climbed over the barrier towards the stage, and about 4 or 5 policemen just pulled me off, and I was carried out by my arms and my legs out of the Albert Hall. As we were being dragged out, some of the Miss World contestants in all the beautiful, beautiful young women in all their baubles and, bathing costumes and high heels saying, "Let them go," to the policeman. We were exhilarated by the demonstration and exhilarated by its success and astonished by how successful it had been. I do see Miss World as one of the most spectacular of consciousness-raising episodes, if you like. I mean, it did leave its mark.
No good putting me anywhere near technology. Do it. So there we have it, a spectacular consciousness-raising episode. As Sally Alexander says there, left its mark, and one kind of very clear example of building from individual to group to actually coming into the public sphere to make a major disruption to this televised context. And again, I feel when she's talking about it in that witness statement of being there, you can hear in her voice, can't you, that sense of feeling they're on the cusp of change. It's like, it gives me the goosebumps when I hear that in her voice. I think of, how it must have been to be part of it and really feeling, yes, we can make this difference. But it's here that I can start to, from that spectacular consciousness-raising episode in that public arena, to move us now from the feminism that I've set up towards making the connection to the emerging theatre at this time, the founding of this alternative feminist theatre tradition. Because this is where you find that the demonstrations, just a bit worried about if I can make it a bit larger without spoiling it. losing it. With those demonstrations, they start to have a theatrical dimension to them, and this notion of making counter-cultural spectacles. So I've mentioned one there, which was the demonstration from 1969, where the women were wearing sashes, where they'd made up their own feminist slogan. So instead of Miss United Kingdom or whatever, we have Misfit refuses to conform, or Miss Noma demands a name of her own. All those kind of, I'm sure we could make up some of our own for today. And this is where you start to get some of the women coming together that are interested in theatre, not just to be part of the demonstrations, but then starting to kind of form their own little groups around the demonstrations. So I've given you one example there from the Women's Street Theatre group, Punch and Judy's, which was their 1971 protest, where they created the Flashing Nipple Street Theatre show, so that they had flashing lights at the breasts and the crotch. And unfortunately, the only kind of photograph I can find of it is very dark and poor in the original, so it's even worse on the slide, but at least I hope you can sort of get the sense of what they were doing. And that group went on to do other kind of activist theatricalized demonstrations, again, in the public sphere, and I've mentioned one of those that they did in the toilets in the high-end department store in Miss Selfridge on Oxford Street. So again, trying to kind of get a toehold in that public sphere as a consciousness-raising guerrilla-style tactic, if you will. So it's from those agitprop, street theatre, feminist protest beginnings that groups then begin to form, as in we don't just want to be part of a demonstration, as important as that is on the one hand. We're also theatre women, so we want to form our own groups and we want to make feminist theatre work because we're these professional artists. So it's from there that you start to get the founding of the groups. You can read more about some of those groups in the introduction that I sent over to Feminist Theatre Then and Now. I've headlined some of those here. I think for me they're the most significant ones from this time. The first of which is generally acknowledged as the first, was the Women's Theatre Group, founded in 1974. And that group is still going, and it became renamed the Sphinx in the early 1990s. Because it was around that time you either had to sort of streamline and transform your objectives as a company if you were going to survive. Sort of turn of the 90s is where many of the alternative political groups, not just the feminist ones, begin to disappear because of funding issues and the changing climate that had become far more right-wing than the period that we're talking about at the moment. But the Sphinx has survived, is still going under the artistic directorship of Sue Parrish, who's long campaigned for equality in British theatre, still campaigning. Monsters Regiment in 1975, they're a company that they kept going until the early 90s, and their work was play-based and not just British-based, but were known for introducing a repertoire of work by women from Europe. That was very distinctive about that company. And I have there, at the bottom there, you'll see I've put the link to their archive. It's a free archive. There's no subscription to it. And I think it's one of the best I've seen of the companies from this era. You can't find performances on there, but what you will find are a lot of the reviews, production photographs, as well as some audio recordings relating to the productions. So if you're interested in work from this period, that's an archive that I would definitely recommend that you check out. And then Siren, which was formed as a lesbian theatre company at the close of the decade, alongside Spare Tire, which formed in relation to women's body image and weight. And then Clean Break. And Clean Break is a company that works with women who have encountered the social justice system, have been imprisoned. They work in prisons and they work with ex-offenders. And they're the one other company to keep going today, and the only one of these companies, and this comes up in the reading, that's managed to secure a building. So the minute a company can get a building, then they've got more resources and more chances of surviving. All these other companies and others that are mentioned in the introduction never secured a building and struggled increasingly across the 1980s to secure funding in the harder climate of the 80s when funding was reduced, and we have, you know, what I always talk about as the Thatcherite decade with those values, and completely out of tune with what all these companies set up to do. So it's just the Women's Theatre Group, now the Sphinx, and Clean Break that have survived. So to talk about a little bit about the feminist practice of these companies, and this is where it comes back to the notion of the consciousness raising groups, because the companies, the theatre companies, worked along those similar lines. They were designed to be non-hierarchical. Non-hierarchical in terms not only of organisation, but in terms of the work on stage. It moved against the idea of having, you know, the star performer and all the kind of like chorus around someone who's the superstar on stage. It was to be as democratic as possible, the sharing of roles, equalising on stage. And that also applied to, you know, making organisational as well as creative decisions. And that's both it's both a blessing and a curse. If anybody's been in a collective, you'll know what I mean, which is that everybody gets a say, and sometimes you think you're never going to reach a decision. But it is a strategy for trying to democratise voices within a collective or within a company. Now, it also meant, within that environment, a sharing of skills or acquiring of skills. Because again, theatre in the mainstream, or the male stream as I always used to call it, you know, you had to already have the skills, you had to be skilled up, you had to be a qualified lighting designer or set designer, you know, and there wasn't necessarily the opportunities to train for that. But in these groups you could, you know, if you went in and you had a certain interest, and then you could get skilled up and be and take that on. So there were training opportunities that weren't available within the mainstream. There were different views on whether the company should perform plays or devise their own work. Split views on, there wasn't a consensus. The women's theatre group started out always by devising their shows. Monsters Regiment took a different approach and felt actually kind of finding a script, coming up with a script, that's a specialist task for a playwright. So they always work with playwrights. And eventually the women's theatre group moved to do the same thing. Okay, so but there wasn't a kind of ready, oh yes, we're definitely devising them, making them ourselves. The kind of variances at the time. Finding work, making work was influenced both by the agitprop style issues as exemplified by the spectacular consciousness raising episode, and also by feminist literature at the time. Because again, this is the decade when in the UK we have the founding of feminist presses like Virago, or the Women's Press, the magazine Spare Rib. They're all coming in the 70s. So they're all kind of, you know, the women are making this theatre, and these ideas and these literatures are all around them. And again, it's fueling that sense of possibility of changing the world. So to give a couple of examples of that from these groups, I picked out these two reflections. And the first one is from Claire Chapman, Spare Tire. And Claire Chapman is also involved in that introduction from Feminist Theatre Then and Now, so you can find her reference there too. But there she is saying, you know, as a lifetime dieter, I was stunned, absolutely amazed by Fat is a Feminist Issue, which was the study by Susie Orbach. After reading it, I kept scanning Time Out, thinking someone was bound to start a group to do a play about fat as a feminist issue. I kept looking every week, and then I thought, I'm going to start that group. Okay? So, two things there. One is, as it does exemplify like how a piece of feminist literature becomes a kind of influence on founding a group, and spent, you know, a decade making shows where objecting to objectification was very key. But the other thing is just her lovely, I'm going to start that group. I know there are some practitioners in here, and it's like, you know, if you ever kind of in that position and find that, oh, I've got to make a piece, nobody's making it, you should be the ones to go out and make it. That's what I always told my students. You just do it. And the second example there I took was from Jane Boston, who was one of the original members of Siren, the lesbian theatre company founded in 1979. And there she's talking about how they, as a group, they came to think about styles of theatre after the initial explosion. That is after, you know, they wanted to get their ideas out. So much, there she is saying, so much electricity and excitement and energy that came from the ideas. We had to get them out. We had to talk about Mary Daly. We had to talk about radical feminism. We had to talk about being lesbian. Okay, I'm going to come back. I know there's some qualifiers there about radical feminism, whatever. I'm going to come to those shortly, so don't worry about that. We'll get on to explanations. For now, I'm just trying to get across this idea about how important the kind of feminist ideas, agitprop, the literature that's out there, informing these companies setting up when they're first getting together. So, here we have the women's groups collectively forming out in the countercultural margins of, as I say, what I always used to call the male stream. And just to comment on that when I say that, I'm not only referring to the mainstream, commercial, high-profile, state-funded theatres, but also those political groups on the left that were male-dominated. They weren't finding the space for women either. So it's not just the kind of it's not just the right, it's also the left as well that's not creating the spaces for women, which again accounts for why they set up their own. There's a lovely anecdote from Monstrous Regiment about the women that were involved in founding that company being at an audition from the company Belts and Braces, left-wing political theatre group, you know, and watching all these women come forward to audition for two lousy parts and thinking, what's this waste? You know, there's nowhere for them to go. So that was one of the things that motivated them to found Monstrous Regiment. And so in mentioning, because I've just touched on the idea of commercial theatre state-funded, I just thought I would take this moment to say that in the UK context, we do have, in addition to the commercial sector, we do have an arts council that provides states funds. It's never ever enough. It's always competitive. But we do have it, and we've had it since the Arts Council was founded in the mid-20th century. And the Arts Council is set up ostensibly not as a political, there's supposed to be no political judgments in their funding, but sometimes you don't have to look very far to see that there are. I didn't say that as it's being recorded. So these are the women-orientated, often all women spaces that are seminal to the likes of myself as a kind of feminist scholar, critic, looking to develop approaches to this work. This work that's beginning to develop a feminist tradition in theatre. If you're working in academia at the time, it's like, how do we analyse it? Like I was saying before, you know, it's like it wasn't already mapped out. So we had to explore ways, find ways to approach this work. And one of the things that was influential at the time, and this is certainly something some of you may well know about from your studies, which was Laura Mulvey's famous concept of the male gaze, pioneered in film studies, and that became very important to us in theatre studies. Okay, so it's a kind of interdisciplinary connection there, or move between the two. Because what we were interested in those early years was finding the ways to bring that male stream focus into focus and critique it. So that's where the male gaze and notions of objectification and objecting to objectification made inroads into theatre studies. And I've given you a quotation there, which I feel is helpful in understanding this, that comes from Sue Ellen Case and Feminism Theatre, which was also published in 1988. So another of the pioneers, like Jill Dolan's Feminist Spectator as critic. And there's Sue Ellen explaining to us how in the realm of theatrical production, the gaze is owned by the male. The majority of playwrights, directors, and producers are men. This triumvirate determines the nature of the theatrical gaze, deriving the sign for woman from their perspective. In the realm of audience reception, the gaze is encoded with culturally determined components of male sexual desire, perceiving woman as a sexual object. And to follow through on that, to exemplify it, so it's kind of the understanding becomes clearer. Here's the example. When the ingenue makes her entrance, the audience sees her as the male protagonist sees her. The blocking of her entrance, her costume and the lighting are designed to reveal that she is the object of his desire. In this way, the audience also perceives her as an object of desire by identifying with his male gaze. This example illustrates one major cultural assumption, that the male is the subject of the dramatic action. Now, I know over the years the kind of notions of the male gaze have been critiqued, more complicated, but in this pioneering moment, it's what you have to remember, the context, transferred to theatre studies is about understanding how we can begin to see that within the male stream representation, male-dominated UK theatre, that women are othered and objectified. And as academics, feminist academics, we can begin to have the critical tools to analyse that ourselves and with students. And of course, feminist theatre itself is trying to work in an opposite way by making women the subject of the drama and of the action. And in this regard, I wanted to point out to you a shift here, the connection and a shift from Mulvey, because in her seminal analysis of the male gaze, she uses that expression when she's explaining to us how women are simultaneously looked at and displayed with their appearance coded for strong visual and erotic impact. They can be said to connote to be looked at-ness. Okay, so that's the seminal wording there, to be looked at-ness. Well, what we then were arguing in theatre studies, and this is what I've added there, is we had the possibility through theatre of looking at to be looked at-ness. It's another shift. So in terms of feminist critique, in terms of feminist criticism, you're trying to understand that the notion of to be looked at-ness, as per Mulvey's description, with theatre, which is a doing, thinking practice. Theatre thinks because it does. It has embodied thinking in its practices. It has tools, theatrical tools, which can conduct its own critique, which for shorthand are called looking at to be looked at-ness. Okay, see the shift there. So I've got a slide here and then I'm going to make you do something. So the setup for this here is, this is Jill Dolan from 2013. So we've mentioned Jill Dolan's 1988 Feminist Spectator as critic. 2013, Jill does The Feminist Spectator in Action. So a kind of legacy of the original. And in there, she's commenting again on the gaze that was so important back in the first wave of feminist criticism and theory in relation to theatre. And then she's again reminding us how culture is not an innocent preoccupation. Television, films, theatre productions and performances and other representational expressive media both shape and reflect who we are to ourselves and to one another. We learn from seeing in performance how gender and race relations are embodied and enacted. Okay. Second comment, which is kind of quite a disappointing one, isn't it? Very little has changed since 1988, when I argued in The Feminist Spectator's critic that the gaze remains unapologetically male, borrowing from Mulvey's foundational scholarship on what she called the male gaze in cinema to forge a methodology for feminist criticism and theory in theatre and performance studies. Very little has changed. That was her argument made 2013, so just over a decade ago. So, keeping that in mind then, I have a little task for everybody in the room, is now I want you to think of the most, what shall I call it? I was going to say favourite theatre performance, a performance that's meant a lot to you. Just think of it for a second. Just think, something you've seen in the theatre that is a real standout performance for you. I'll give you a second to... Has everybody thought of something that feels really memorable? Let's see if I can... Is that a yes? Yes, everybody got one? Yes. Okay, so I'm sure you've probably heard of this test from film studies, the Bechdel test, which if you haven't, the rules are you go to a movie, only go to a movie, it satisfies three basic requirements. One, it has to have at least two women in it. Two, that they talk to each other. And three, they talk to each other about something that's other than a man. So this is the Bechdel test for film, but if I just quickly ask of the performances that you've just thought of, something that was memorable to you, how many passed that test? Stick a hand up if they pass the test. Do they pass the Bechdel test? So not many. Is that right? Okay, so let's shout out a couple of the ones that passed the test so we can hear what they are. Any? I don't bite. Just give us some names. If they pass the test. Yeah, go on. Go on, tell us. Tell us one that passed the test.
Muzahimat by Shravanti Bhattacharya.
Okay, so tell me a little bit.
Okay, so the performance was about how women uses their at the end of the performance, Shravanti Bhattacharya shows how the women use their body as a site of rebellion. In light of the recent Arjikar incident in Kolkata, this play was adopted, and she took it as a street theatre movement also. She did this as Amader Chitkar, Meyeder Chitkar, like this, the shout of women, if we roughly translate that. So yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else seen this one? No? Yeah. You agree? So it passes the test. Yeah. Another example. Yeah, pass this one over. Let's hear another example.
So it was a play at one of the theatre festivals, and it had 4 girls in it. I'm forgetting the name. The play was by Agas Foundation. Yeah, Bhagi Hui Ladkiyan, which means runaway girls, and they were talking about the kind of labor that they had to do, and sort of their own lives in terms of what sort of troubled them, how they were. One of them was trying to sort of have a career of her own. The other one could not communicate with her friend or had sort of these kind of issues, but it was more about how they were dealing with it, and while they were going through the labor that they do, sort of getting ready every day and sort of getting ready as a woman, and then traveling to work, coming back, cleaning, cooking, all of that.
Wait. One more example, then I'll add another instruction. Or let's hear one that failed. Give us an example that failed, that was something memorable that it didn't pass the test. What was it?
I actually thought of 2 examples, and one of them failed. When you said that it about this test, is this performance that I watched many years ago by Pina Bausch here in Delhi, and many pieces. I mean, it was a dance performance. Many pieces were there, and the one that really has stuck with me over a decade is where this movement that a woman does when she gets rejected by her partner, and but the movement and what she does, the dancer did, Pina Bausch's troupe, was so beautiful that it has sort of, but it fails the test. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to extend. Ooh, I'm going to extend this test now because, okay, that was from film and just to get us started, but I have now one. This is called the Sphinx test. Now this one is more recent, and I mentioned the artistic director Sue Parrish of the Sphinx, who's been a lifelong, career-long campaigner for equality for women in theatre. And she's made so many approaches to the Arts Council, so many reports, trying to get them to shift their position to equalise the funding and create more opportunities for women, and it's still not there yet. And at one point, in the frustration of all this, she was inspired by the Bechdel test, think, well, okay, let's have a theatre one. And she shared this with me, and said, can you try it with your students, just to get some feedback? But and we did, but this one is really, she set it up for theatre companies. But not so much, it wasn't primary thinking about, kind of the university theatres, but the professional theatres, and thinking to prompt, really like a prompt. It's like when you're making, when you're thinking about the performances you're doing, could you not ask yourselves this as a kind of reminder? So what they put in was, they're kind of very basic principles. Is there a woman centre stage? Does she interact with other women? Is there someone, a woman, driving the action? Is she in a sort of protagonist position, or is she on the receiving end? Does she fall into a stereotype or not? Is the story essential? Is it a story that's going to be impactful? Okay, so this is the Sphinx test. So we're just before yes, we can take like 10 minutes now, and then 5 to wrap up before the tea break. So now, I don't know how much you know each other in here, but if you can kind of turn a little bit so that you can interact around a couple of the tables, and either think of the examples you've come up with or other ones you want to think about these prompts. performances you've seen, how far, again, are we passing or failing the test? How far are women being represented? How far are they being in a kind of the driving seat? How far is it not just the solo woman, but there are interactions? How far are they involved in impactful stories on the stage? Okay, examples that you've got, or examples of abject failures that are not doing any of this. Okay, so just turn and face it so you can start to get, because you may know people, you may not, because I don't know. So you can just like cluster around a little bit, turn around between you all, and then let's see what we can have. So I'll just give you a few minutes for that. Introduce yourselves to each other if you don't know each other, and get ready just to offer little bits of feedback from the room. And then the reward is you get some tea. Okay? It's a deal. It's a deal. All right. Okay. Timing work for you, yeah? Okay, so I'm hearing some interesting thoughts just going around the room. I know I won't get round everybody, but are there just within the groups anything just that anybody would like to share? Just something that you think is the most important thought that you've had from the little mini conversations, and don't be shy.
Yes, we can.
Yeah? Okay. Shall I pass it over? Just something. Anything. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you ended up talking about films, adverts, rituals we had over here. Anything, it's fine.
Actually, we were discussing that many of us have already watched the Wonder Woman from Hollywood. But in Indian society, mostly the woman-centric cinemas are like women are miserable, they faced patriarchy, and they are reciprocating that. Okay. Two cinemas that came into my mind, that is Kala and Bulbul. There, the like heroine is same, and she is portrayed like either she is very like a peaceful and very conservative, very good child and good female, that good in the sense that good. But after that, when she reciprocates, she tries to take a revenge, and she is juxtaposed with witch after.
Be one or the other.
Yeah, either you are good, you are very simple, very like kind of household, and or either you are a witch. There is nothing in between. You cannot be one and only. In like you cannot have that heroic portray in Indian films. Mostly, I would say. Yeah, we were discussing.
So falling into stereotypes and falling down in the terms that we've got up here. Thank you. Let's have a couple more examples. Otherwise, I won't let you go for tea. We over here for an example? Coming? Who's coming? Yeah. Come on, somebody else. Yes. Come on.
Okay, so
I'm going to try and make sure at some point, by Friday, everybody's had a voice. That's my challenge.
the play that I was telling them about was this play. It's in Bangla. It's in Bangla. It's called Binodini Opera. So the point about the play is that it's based on a real person's life. It's biography. No, it's just based on a real person's life. So there was this theater artist in 17th century Bengal, Binodini Dashi.
19th.
No.
Yeah. Binodini Dashi is 19th century.
Didn't she die by the 1800s?
No, she died in 1940s.
I'm so sorry. In 19th century Bengal, and so she's a sex worker's son and daughter, and what we discovered in our discussion, which Tomalika pointed out by the way, was that there is in her autobiography and even in the play, the conversation that she has with her co-actors and the women around her are essentially very self-derogatory conversations where she portrays herself as just a street hussy. I'm just a horse child. I do not belong to the stage. The stage is sacred. I am not. So there's this binary that she's drawing between the sanctity of her profession and the profanity of herself. However, that we realized was an extremely political move on her part as well, for her and her life's trajectory to be heard and to be depicted, because there is also a conflict between what she says she is and how she conducts herself in her personal life and on stage. There are like two dialogues happening. One where she is telling the male public, the Bengal intelligentsia, that she's just a whore. But then when she's on stage, she's one of the most powerful actors out there, and she channels that power. She tells her, she tells the man that keeps her, she tells the man that the power and the money lies with me. You think you have bought me, but you are the one who has been bought by my powers and by my wiles. So that conflict in dialogue between what she believes she herself is, but what she puts out to the world, is something we found very interesting.
Right, so there's a dislocation between the two.
Yes.
And in one you can play one game and you can't in the other, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. One last bit of feedback from any. Of course, so we got one last example from the room. Yay!
So we were talking about a play called Draupadi by Kalakshetra Manipur, based on a short story by Mahashweta Devi of the same name. So the play is about this woman called Draupadi, and Kanhaila locates Draupadi in the socio-political turmoil of Manipur in this case, whereas the short story was based in Naxalbari movement, Bengal. So in this particular case, the plot goes like how Draupadi is molested by soldiers throughout the night, and she's stripped naked. Her clothes are torn apart, and then in the morning she's to be taken to the captain. So the same soldiers who have raped her throughout the night come to her and ask her to dress up because you need to be very presentable in front of the captain. So she deliberately takes off all those clothes and says that while you were raping me for the whole night, you stripped me of my clothes. So now I'm going to use the same body, the same raped body on which you exerted your power, to use it as a symbol of resistance. So she says that if you're going to take me to the captain, you are going to take me naked. So I'm not going to wear my clothes back. And there was a lot of backlash also that Ima Sabitri, who played the role of Draupadi, she faced from the audience, because she was labeled as somebody who's, not sophisticated. She's shameless to be appearing nude on stage. So, I mean, it's problematic at both levels, not just the storyline, the thematic concern of the play, but also the reception. That how they could.
Can I just ask, who is the audience for this?
It was essentially the Manipuri people at first, and then the play was taken all around India. So, yeah, basically the Indian audience didn't really, it didn't go very well with the Indian audience that there is an actress nude on stage. And that same nudity becomes a weapon or a symbol of resistance for the plot of the play. And also for the reception of the play for the Indian audience. So it points out the hypocrisy both within the story as well as the society.
And all told, it does sound like one that is impactful and it's something that needs to be told despite
Absolutely.
all of those tensions and contradictions within the piece. And it
Yes.
absolutely needed to happen, is
Yes.
what I'm hearing.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you want to participate in that workshop, the eligibility is that you have to be in the first year of your PhD. And it is better if you have a project related to cultural forms, okay? So the numbers are small, have to be kept small for this kind of workshop. So we have about 20 seats for this special workshop. For that also, please give your names to Komita. She has a sheet with her where you can put down your names and affiliation and your email address, okay? We will let you know tomorrow exactly where we will hold the workshop, Wednesday, 12:30. Right? Yes. So that's all from us now.
Okay, just to add one note about that workshop, it was just an offering of mine if, as Malrika just said, if you're like starting off a PhD, and it's for if you want some advice, but it's in a group environment, so it's not an individual tutorial. But if you want to come and if you want to sign up to come, it's like come with your beginning ideas and what you want to share, and as a group we can kind of think of some guidance between us. That's hence calling it a workshop, or kind of processing your ideas. So it's not me talking at you, but me kind of guiding conversations in a smaller group environment for those of you setting out on your PhDs. Okay. Now, back to this afternoon, and for this, I said this afternoon it's round 3 because we've had an opening, a beginning, and now it's round 3. And I say round 3 because I'm going to show you a performance shortly, which is set in a wrestling ring in rounds. But ours is round 3, and what I'm going to do in here is finish some more bits of information which are related to introducing the feminisms with an S, the 3 of them, in relation to forms of theatre, and just take about 15 minutes now to do that. Then I'm going to share with you a performance which takes about, it's an adaptation of a stage show which takes about 29 minutes, if I remember from the timing, in the screen adaptation. I'll explain that what it is in the moment, and then I have some kind of a few pointers around that for you to think about while you watch it, and then we can finish with a discussion between us around that performance, which will wrap up some of the ideas that are being presented on this first afternoon. And I just thought, because we've got 3 rounds today, unlike the other days, it would be good to break it up with something you can watch for a bit, so we're not getting too fatigued out before the end of the day. Okay, so that explains how we're going forward for this last segment. So let's see if we're still working. So the feminisms then, that, and again remember Elaine, UK context, because these feminisms are ones that when they travel through different contexts and different times as well can change in what they signify. So for my context, these were the 3 feminisms that were important to the founding of feminist theatre that I've been talking about this afternoon. I have named them there as bourgeois feminism, radical feminism, socialist feminism. I've also put in brackets the other names that you might see them called, particularly if you look at the literature from North America. I think in the UK we kind of fairly use bourgeois and liberal feminism fairly interchangeably, both, and these days talk more about liberal feminism than bourgeois feminism. But in the North American context, they would talk more about cultural feminism rather than radical feminism, and materialist feminism rather than socialist feminism. So I'm sticking to the radical and socialist for my context, but in various of the literatures you will see that doubling coming up. Okay, so just to be aware of the naming there. So it's important, as I said just now, to think about feminisms plural in terms of the political dynamics of the feminist movement and the correlation of those dynamics in terms of feminist theatre aesthetics and the challenge to the male stream. So this is where I gave you the reading for today, Michelin Wanda's discussion of those three feminisms as they were formally conceived in the British context. And so you've had that already to establish an understanding. But if I just headline, give you the tip of the iceberg now, in terms of bourgeois liberal feminism, these are bourgeois feminist strategies, and I think they are more strategies than a theory, really. They're strategies to work through and with the state with the aim of ameliorating women's rights and opportunities. And hence why you see Michelin Wanda also referring to this kind of feminism as emancipationism. So it's working through the state in terms of equality. It's often, in my context, being perceived as the popular face of feminism, as though it is feminism, and that's all it is. You know, there aren't any other strands there. Because it's focused on achieving equality, for example, through state legislation, it's more reformist. It's reformist rather than engaging with the notion of a radical transformation. So if you think for a minute, to give an example, if you've got a parliament and it has very few women MPs, a bourgeois feminist strategy is you lobby to get more women MPs in place, but you don't change the parliament structure. Okay, so it's reformist in that sense. It's not saying, right, we've got to rethink the whole structure of parliament. All we're trying to do is get more women into the same system. So it's more women at the top. And I've noted there is a very highly problematic legacy to do with this strand of feminism, because when it, back in the second wave movement, it had a very, I was going to say very important, it had a key role in kind of, you know, equality strategies, they are important, they're always important, but not if they get co-opted by what I've referred to here, and I'm sure you're all familiar with, neoliberalism. So that if it starts out with liberal equality strategies, which are in the interests of all women, reform strategies that might have an impact for all women, that disappears under neoliberalism, which adopts a creed of individualistic advancement. It loses the sense of any social collectivism, so it gets problematically distorted. Don't worry if that's not clear straight away. I will be coming back to it over the days with examples, okay? With radical feminism, the key thing with the radical feminism, which does argue for a radical transformation, the key thing is the contestation of patriarchalism, objecting to patriarchal systems. And it can take a pro-woman stance, might have a separatist goal, but if remember, anti-patriarchalism is the kind of like the key identifier of the radical feminist strand. And socialist feminism, okay, so patriarchy remains important to this strand. In a UK context, socialist feminism was always considered the most radical of all the strands and the one that most attention was drawn to, particularly in a feminist theatre-making context. The challenge here, okay, you hold on to being the patriarchal systems you want to change, like radical feminism, but the motivation here is also to work through issues of class and gender. So when you want to do that, you've then got the issue of having to contest socialism that's gender blind. Socialist ideas are dealing with class at this time, but not necessarily gender. So the question becomes, how do you make socialism feminist? How do you get kind of, you know what I was talking before about the male-dominated theatre groups on the left not creating spaces for women? So how do you encourage and develop change by getting them to see the need to actually challenge their own patriarchal views within a socialist left-wing context? Yeah? So there are challenges there. But the socialist feminism strand is the one that initially conjugates class and gender, and as it evolves, then also takes in questions that relate to race and sexuality and so forth. So it becomes, over the time, more intersectional. Now, this is the correlating part to do with theatre, how aesthetics correspond to each of those feminisms. In terms of bourgeois feminism, that is the kind of those are the kind of feminist dynamics that are going to be allied with the most conservative forms. Again, remember, least radical. So it was often the case that you would find a bourgeois feminist dynamic operating in the terrain of realism, which has a very, very strong tradition in British theatre. Especially so since, well, it dates back further than the 20th century, but in terms of the mid-20th century and the advent of Look Back in Anger and our famous kitchen sink plays and all of that, it becomes very established at this kind of centre of new playwriting. So that's that really strong tradition. So realism is where you're more likely to find liberal bourgeois feminism. Again, you're advocating not changing the theatre industry. You're saying let's get more women on stage. Let's have more women-centred stories. But you're not looking to kind of radically change the setup. Okay. In terms of the radical or the cultural feminist aesthetic, well, that in its more radical form did encourage a very different shift. And I think in the North American literature, it kind of expresses it better in terms of what was being achieved than in terms of looking to the possibilities of a women's language in theatre. I know we got very excited about that for the time, about, you know, what does it mean if you could develop a women's language? What does that feel like? What does it sound like? What's the kind of physicality to it? How do you, what is it? I mean, everybody understood that the kind of the dominant, like, realist structures were objectifying women more often than not. But what's the alternative? And it's fraught with questions about essentialism. You know, is it that kind of femaleness? It wasn't straightforward, but it was a kind of exciting idea to think about. What does, you know, if you can move, you can work through the textures of women's bodies and the bodies to stories. What does that feel like? What does that give you as an aesthetic? And I will say more about that tomorrow. But the third one, and this is the one that I've said was the most significant in the UK context, is the socialist feminist aesthetics. And these are the aesthetics that went very much with, to simplify it, the presentational methods rather than representational. Think of representational brings you back into that conventional frame where women are more likely to be othered as the objects or the objectified than be the subjects of the drama, which is what women were trying to achieve. And later in the week we have also the whole session on the socialist feminism. I'll be able to talk more about particularly the influence of the Brechtian tradition in relation to the socialist feminist dynamics. Again, I'm just flagging them up for now, so don't worry if you're, because I am aware that everybody's coming from different disciplines, so some may be familiar and some may be, oh my goodness, what's that? But don't worry, these headlines, they will be bedded down throughout the week, so if they're unfamiliar now, they will become more familiar as the week goes on. And if they're already familiar, you can think of it as a revision exercise. Okay, so those are the three feminisms, the three aesthetics. So let's have the performance, so we can all have a bit more. Oh, Elaine's not going to be talking to us for another half an hour. And let me introduce the piece we're going to see is Trafford Tansey, set in a wrestling ring. The story of a woman wrestler. Now, it's very hard I was trying to think, what can I show you as a performance? Not just like archival photographs, but to actually have a bit of a performance for you that relates to the period that I've been talking about this afternoon. And of course, it's very difficult in terms of getting hold of materials from this period. So, but this is one that I can come up with. As I say, what you're going to see is an adaptation for television, not cinema. It's made for TV. So it comes out as a short adaptation by Claire Lockham, who wrote the original play. And I think you can kind of see in it some of the consciousness raising that we've been talking about in terms of how it's set up. I'm always interested in pieces of theatre generally that involve a kind of sporting motif, and in particular those like this one, where the performers also have to be able to manage some of the sport to be able to actually enact the show itself. So when you see the performers in this, kind of note that some of the wrestling moves they've got there may be a bit basic compared to actual professional wrestlers, but they did have to actually train up to be able to do it. But if I can make this paragraph first, so I just taught the first paragraph. So it starts, this play, the origins of it, this play came out in 1978, so, you know, in that period when those theatre groups that I headlined earlier were set up or just about to set up. And it was first done regionally in the Liverpool Everyman Theatre, which is a small repertory theatre in the northwest of England. And it managed to move from there into mainstream theatre, commercial theatre, and eventually onto the TV screen. So it had this phenomenal lifeline for a piece that starts out as a kind of women's protest piece, really. It's kind of interesting history behind it. And whilst it's described on this slide, which you can look at in more detail afterwards, is the beginnings of it. The Everyman had shut for some refurbishment at the late 70s. And when they reopened, they created Trafford, well, what became Trafford Tansy was created as an equality initiative, as in when they'd previously been operating with male-dominated casts and male-dominated audiences. So in the reopening, they wanted to equalise it. And then they had the problem, well, when they looked for scripts that might equalise, balance out a cast, they couldn't find them. So it ended up with Claire Lockham writing this piece, Trafford Tansy. Okay. These are the things to think about while you're watching it. To think about the feminist dynamics that you feel are in the show as you watch. The patriarchal setup, the control of the gaze, because it's an adaptation for the screen, the camera becomes quite important in relation to gazing in this piece. Use of stereotyping, there's quite a lot of stereotyping going on this in relation to gender and class, and to think about the popular form of the whole piece as a consciousness raising model. Okay, you got that, those few points. And for any of the reflections that we do now or into week, where there'll be some other kind of moments of short clips maybe to see, I always want to think of us in the feminist spectator as critic position. That's our position for the week. So when we're looking at it, we're looking at it from that, through that feminist lens. That's our position. Okay, so now we've got the technology bit of switching over to the file, so I can try and get the copy of the performance to play. Let's see if we can make this work. Right. Just use fingers to minimize it. It hasn't. It's done there, but not there.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
You see, if
No, it's not. Can I close this one? Yeah, okay. Wait, let me close this without that. It's not yet changing.
okay,
Oh, no.
no.
Okay, now it's changing, yeah.
Now you want to close that one to
Yeah, minimize. Yeah,
minimize it.
okay, yeah.
All right, so now it's come on. Might want to dim. See how it comes up.
Trafford Tansey, a female wrestler fighting for her rights as well as her title.
Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, top of the bill tonight, Countdown Promotions proudly presents for the first time in any wrestling ring, a man and a woman fighting to the finish. The woman, ladies and gentlemen, is the reigning European Ladies Champion Trafford Tansey. The man, the ever-popular Dean Rebel. Have you ever asked yourself what it takes for a lady to become a winner? Are they born or are they bred? In 8 dazzling rounds, Countdown Promotions will attempt to answer these questions and many more. Countdown Promotions proudly presents the exclusive Trafford Tansey story. Told, ladies and gentlemen, with the help of members of the Wrestling Fraternity. An old school friend played by my gorgeous assistant Platinum Sue.
Go for it, go for it, go, go, go!
Allow me to introduce to you that lucky lady, Tansey's mum! A Tansey's dad! Yeah! All the world loves a villain. I'm only joking. The man who taught us so much, Dean Rebel! And the little lady herself, the reigning European Ladies Champion, Trafford Tansey! Ladies and gentlemen, the Trafford Tansey story. Can I have the contestants, please, for round 1? Oh, Tansey's childhood. And in the red corner, Trafford Tansey, and in the blue corner, her opponent for round 1. Tansey's mum.
She's a credit to me, she is, our Tansey.
Mum in a million. Ladies and gentlemen, round 1.
Our Tansey. Come on, love. Give us a smile. I wanted a boy and look what I got. Yeah! I got a girl all covered in snot. Yeah! Yeah!
Wait, ref, stop her.
Oh, no slapping, missus.
No slapping. She's got to learn, hasn't she? Who else is going to teach her life's dangerous? Now, Tansey, don't stick your fingers in the electric plugs. Don't touch the iron. Don't go out in the street. And don't go talking to them men in long grey macks.
No, you're getting it all wrong. My Tansey's a good girl. She's beautiful. Apple of her dad's eye.
We were all spoiling her, weren't we?
Oi, did you use your fist there, missus?
Did you see me use my fist?
No, but I've got to ask.
Dad's little girl, ain't you? Dad's little sugar.
She was always a disappointment to us. I mean, who wants a girl, eh? You could have had a boy. Because, I mean, well, a boy's a boy, isn't he? And, well, they grow up into men, don't they? Oh, men are wonderful, aren't they, eh? They tell you what to do. They tell you how to do it. If they've got out left over. They give you housekeeping money and all, don't they? And I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner in round 1. Mum! A big hand for Mum, please. Showing us all how to do it. Oh, thank you.
Oh, Dad were always supporting her, weren't he? Till she come home from school one night.
Mum,
She says,
can I have a career?
well, I thought, I'll let her dad sort it out.
Ladies and gentlemen! Round 2. Tansey is sweet 16. Oh, watch it, you. And in the red corner. And watch you don't let her get away with anything.
Just keep out of my face, you.
Tansey's down.
Come on, you great pudding, you're holding up the action.
Action, she says. She wants some action. I'll give you some action, Ted. Right, you ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, round 2.
You're late. Where have you been?
Same as every night. At school. It's the truth.
Yes, pull the other one.
Listen, I can't work here because me
Mum
mum...
has to tell you on all the time and you can't concentrate. I've heard it all before.
Well, it's true.
I'll tell you whether it's true or not, my girl. Do you hear me? A career. Don't you butt dad me either. When people are crying out for jobs, don't make me laugh. Tell you what, you just forget all about wanting a career. I'll give you 50 quid, 50 notes to spend on yourself. You can get the lot. Get yourself a decent outfit, some makeup. Get yourself a decent fella, one that wants to marry you. I mean, come on. It's all your mum and dad ever wanted.
I don't want to get married. I want a career. I want to be somebody.
Somebody? A wife is somebody, isn't she? You're trying to tell me that your mother isn't somebody?
No.
Marriage, that's the best career money can buy.
I want some exams.
You want some exams? You pay for them. You earn your own living. See how you like that? Yes!
Do you submit?
Yes!
In round two, and submission to that by means of a Boston Crab!
Oh, come on, Tansy. Not the waterworks, for God's sake. Oh,
All right, quick. Go on, can I have the contestants for round 3, please? Tansy is now luscious 18 and working down the local chippy. And in the blue corner, the ever-popular Mr. Dean Rebel! Ladies and gentlemen, round 3.
Yes?
Liver dinner for one with chips, rice, peas, meat and potato pie, sausage, pancake roll, and stick a bit of fish on the side just to finish it off. What's up, girl? You're crying all over the fish. Oh, yeah. I'm not too fussy, but don't go for too much salt with it. Do you know what I mean? Oh, come on, cheer up. It might never happen. Here. Oh, want to use my hanky? I hate to see a girl cry. Go on, take it.
No.
All right. I'll do it for you. Come here. Now. Better? Here. You got nice eyes. Really, you have. Much too nice to waste frying chips. I mean, what do they know about love, eh? I suppose I better put my hanky away. Oh, bit of a tight fit. What with a 3-piece suite and that. Yeah, you're not going to tell me you didn't know what we kept hidden away down there, are you?
Oh, watch your mouth, Rebel.
Don't be nosy. Feeling better? Better and better, eh? I mean, I knew you was tasty, but I didn't know you was delicious. What's your name?
Tansy.
Hi, Tansy.
Aye.
Don't bother to wrap yourself up, I'll eat you now.
Oh, not too close, Rebel. Is that your name?
Yeah. Dean Rebel, training to be a professional wrestler. Come over here and try me folding body press.
No!
Oh, I can see it's time for a touch of the old romance. Flowers for the one I love.
That's a ticket.
Flowers? Jesus, do you think I'm soft or something? Go give them to your old lady.
Ooh. Vinegar as well, eh? You're fantastic, Tansy. We were made for each other.
A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. A break in round 3. Hey, a knockout to Mr. Dean Rebel. Yeah. All right, break. Come on, can I break this down?
little girl married. Our Tansy. The wedding night. The honeymoon.
Round 4. Can I have the contestants, please, for round 4? And in the red corner, ladies and gentlemen, that very lovely lady, that lucky girl, Mrs. Dean Rebel, eh? And in the blue corner, also, in the red corner, her old man, Mr. Dean Rebel. Ladies and gentlemen, round 4.
Oh, it's so early in the morning. The dew's still on the grass. What a morning. The morning chorus. Oh, it's so beautiful. I'm the luckiest girl in the world. Dean's a professional wrestler now. The most important part of a wrestler's career is his training. Dean. Dean. Time to get up.
Oh. Oh, yeah. Oh, Tansy.
Oh, Dean.
Oh, Jesus.
Now clean your shoes and iron your towel. I've oiled your stopwatch and I've packed the knapsack with tea and sandwiches for 2 and wait for training.
Good girl. I'm ready. Oh, yeah, you better carry the knapsack. Don't want me straining my shoulders, do we? I mean, a wrestler's muscles should be flexible at all times. Write that down, Tansy.
Wrestlers.
You remember to bring the stopwatch?
Yes, Dean.
Good girl. Now, when I say go, I want you to press the little button on the top. Do you understand?
Yes, Dean.
Right. Ready?
Yeah.
Steady. Go! Ah! I feel fantastic. You know that, Tansy? Best I ever felt. Top of the world. Moving like grade A, well-oiled clockwork. Up, down, up, down. Try this, Tansy. Chest easy. Hamstrings cool. Tansy. Write this down, Tansy. A wrestler would be nothing. Nothing
Nothing.
without the loving support of a good woman, his wife.
Oh, no contest, no contest. Bow! Break! Now look, you two, get this into your heads. The paying public doesn't want to know about marital bliss. They've paid their money to see the fighting, the blood and thunder. Now come on! Give us the dirt!
Dirt? What dirt? Our Tansy was perfection. Credit to me, she was. Men never know when they're well off.
Not when they can have their cake and eat it.
Round 5.
Tansy, Pat! Lovely to see ya! Oh, hello. Do I know you? Of course you do! Mind you, a lot of people don't recognise me since I went into the beauty business. Funny, isn't it? I'm Sue, your mate from school, remember? Oh, yes, I do remember. Oh. You're married now, aren't you, Pat? Yes. How did you know? Well, your hair's all anyhow. No makeup. Carpet slippers. You look like some of the cats sicked up. Well, I was just popping out to the shops. I've got nothing in for tea. I'd never let myself go like that. I mean, you don't want him looking at anyone else, do you? Not that I don't envy your mind. 'Course, I've had me chances. But you know my mum, she brought me up to be particular about marriage.
What?
Well, I suppose you can't all be lucky. My fella's terrific. Is he? Yeah. Bit of all right. Yeah. Loves you to distraction, does he? Yeah, I know what you mean, though. Yeah. I'm in love at the moment. Oh, ever since I turned professional at the beauty business, I carry the boards round between each round at wrestling. Well, I met this fella, middleweight, muscles all over the place, turns me knees to jelly. What's his name? I'm not going to tell you that, am I? All right then. Well, actually, it's Dean. Dean? Dean Rebel. Course, he's married.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, come on!
Ring the bell, please.
Somebody ring!
Ring the bell. 7. Come on. 8, bell, and 9, bell. Oh, that was a piece of luck, wasn't it? Well, bad luck, I mean, Tansy. Saved by the bell, wasn't she? And, anyway.
It's time you stop living in cloud cuckoo land.
A girl needs a mother at a time like this.
Oh, Mum! Mum!
Ladies and gentlemen, round 6.
There, Mummy's here now.
He doesn't love me. He doesn't care after all I've done for him. The training.
Come on, dry your eyes.
Oh, how could he do it, Mum? Mum, let me come home. I want to start all over again.
Don't say that. Dean's your husband. You promised to love and obey him.
Well, I'll divorce him.
Tansy, life is not a bowl of cherries.
Oh, Mum, let me come home.
No! You've made your bed, you may lie on it. Besides, your dad can't afford to keep you.
Well, I'll get a job. I'll earn me living.
Dean loves you in his own way.
Oh, Mum.
And that platinum sushi might not be my cup of tea, but she knows how to look after herself. You've let yourself go, my girl. Nobody wants something that looks as if it's been thrown on a rubbish tip, do they? And anyway, what choice have you got? Eh?
OK, Mum. I'll go back to Dean.
Yes, that's my good girl. You need a man to look after you at a time like this. Women are nothing alone.
Yeah!
Ow! What are you doing? That hurts!
I'm practicing. I'm going back to Dean. I've done all the training, and I'm gonna be a professional wrestler as well.
Not natural, is it? Women wrestling.
Monday!
It's like one of those little plants. I mean, they look all nice and pretty.
2,
And all of a sudden, snap, they've caught their prey and eaten it alive.
3, breaker!
Venus flytraps, thanks very much, Dean. I think that's what I'll call it.
In the round 6, the winner by means of a Venus flytrap, the winner, Terraford Tansy!
What are you two looking at? At least she's got a mother's spirit. Go on.
Come on!
Manchester in round 6, the winner by means of a Venus flytrap, the new Northern Area Ladies Champion, Terraford Tansy.
Fight! You must always be training. Fight! You must always be fit. Fight! You must always be working. Fight! If she stops, then she's gonna get hit.
In Liverpool, in round 5, her opponent is unable to continue. The winner by means of a Venus flytrap, the new British Ladies Champion, Terraford Tansy.
Smashes and chops. Fight using drop kicks and headbutts. Fight and you don't ever stop.
In Dusseldorf, in round 2, the winner by means of a Venus flytrap, the new European Ladies Champion, Terraford Tansy.
Hey, I never knew she had it in her. She's made her old dad proud. Fancy becoming European Ladies Wrestling Champion after just 1 season. Fancy that.
Ladies and gentlemen, round 7. And in the blue corner, Tansy's manager.
Manager? I haven't got a manager.
Listen to the ref, Tansy. He knows what he's talking about. I'm your manager now.
Ladies and gentlemen, round 7.
Don't be soft, Dad. I'm over 18.
Tansy, be reasonable. You're just a slip of a girl. I mean, a slip of a woman. Your mum will be made up when she hears the terms. It's most generous of you, Tansy. 50%. Couldn't have asked for better myself.
Dad!
And anyhow, I've already fixed up your first fight. Mud wrestling in Hamburg, naked. I'll make a fortune.
Right!
Dad!
This is what I think of your contract, Dad.
Well, hey, what about your mother who's going to support her?
Oh, stop
In round 7, her father is unable to continue. Ladies and gentlemen, round 8. And And in the blue corner, Tansy's long-suffering husband, Dean Rebel. Shut up! Ladies and gentlemen, round 8.
Tansy,
Dean?
where have you been?
Training?
Training? You're always bleeding training. I ain't important no more, Tansy. Tansy, I love you.
Look.
Don't you love me no more?
If I don't train, I won't get anywhere, will I? I'll lose me title. You should try it as well.
What?
Training! You lost your last fight.
Well, that was arranged.
Oh, was it? And who was always telling me it was above that sort of thing? A wrestler must fight to win, Tansy. I wrote that down. I tell you what, I think you're slipping.
And whose fault's that then, eh? I mean, I come home from work. Do I find a hot meal waiting for me? No. There's a note on the table saying your salad's in the fridge. Well, that is not how champions is maintained, you know.
Oh, that's what I'm supposed to be, is it? A servicing unit? Get off your arse and you try doing something for a change. You know, it's not impossible.
Yeah, I would, if I wanted to, but I don't, see. I mean, why keep a dog and bark myself, eh? I mean, I haven't got a sock that hasn't got a hole in it. It's embarrassing. What would my mum say if she found out?
Now look, we've been through all this. And I can't do it all. Not the training, the fighting, the travelling and everything here. It's just not possible.
Well, that is all I wanted to hear, is that, Tansy? I mean, if you can't do both things, then you can either do one thing or the other, eh? No compromises. So either you decide to be my wife, or off you trot. Be a lady wrestler, but don't expect no support from me. Lady wrestler. It's unnatural. The only place these ladies should wrestle is in bed. Hey, I'll fight you there if you like.
That's the only place you think I've got a chance.
Yeah. Well, what's it to be then?
I don't know.
Right, well, I'll decide.
No, you bleeding won't!
Am I going to have to thump
No!
you?
Yes! But in the ring. And I tell you what, if I lose, I will give up wrestling and become a housewife.
Now you're talking.
But if you lose, you give up wrestling and be a housewife.
Do what?
You heard. What is the matter? Scared of losing, lost your bottle?
No chance. Right. You're on.
All right, you two. Save it for the big fight. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. This is it, the big fight. The fight of the decade. And in the blue corner, the ever popular Mr. Dean Rebel. And in the red corner, the reigning European Ladies Champion, Trafford Tansy. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, the loser of tonight's contest has agreed to quit the wrestling ring and become a housewife. Seconds away, round 1.
Oh, come on, ref, he's doing his
Come on, come on.
Come on.
Go on, Tansy, keep going. Love you, Dave. Yeah.
Feet on the ropes. What a shame.
Yeah.
Ropes are breaker.
Did you see that? What, you
Now what are you going to do?
Ladies and gentlemen, the first fall by means of a folding body press to Trafford Tansy.
Yes!
First away, round two.
Oh, come on, Tansy. Come on, shake hands.
Oh,
All
what?
right.
Don't.
Come on, we were lovers.
Come on.
Come on, Tansy. Don't. Fair fight.
Oh, no, come on, Tansy. Don't, Tansy. Don't. Go for your wrestling move. Don't do it.
Come
Don't
on,
do it, girl.
Don't. Shake
Don't.
hands. Come on.
Don't do it.
Come on.
Yeah.
It wasn't a punch! It was a punch!
Flat in the hand.
You punched her!
You want to see a punch? Yeah, right.
What? I love you, lad!
Yeah?
I love you, lad!
Oh, yeah?
Ladies and gentlemen, in round two, a public warning to Dean Rebel. I can't milk you if you show me.
That's right, Red. You're right there, Red.
Come here. Oscar, you submit.
No!
Oscar, submit. Oscar, do you submit?
Yes!
Ladies and gentlemen, in the round two, an equalising submission by means of a backbreaker over the shoulder to Mr. Dean Rebel.
Listen, you can win this. You can win this.
Seconds away. Round three.
Yes! Now what are you gonna do, Rebel?
Oh, what's the matter, Dean? Come on, get up. Come on. Come on.
Come on, girl! You can do it! Come on, you can win this!
One, two, three. A break. Ladies and gentlemen, in round three, the winner, Trafford Tansy. And a big hand for the gallant loser and soon to be a housewife, Dean Rebel. But tonight, the winner in the fight of the decade, fighting to save her wrestling career and winning by means of a Venus flytrap is Trafford Tansy.
I want a rematch! I want a rematch!
Oh, wait, let's go down. No, this is the last slide. There. Right, we've got them back. Okay, so back in the light instead of the dark. I should explain that when you saw this as a live performance, it could be at a theatre, it could be in a real wrestling ring, they were in pubs, they were in clubs. So the thing that you don't get when you get the screen adaptation is the spectator response. Because particularly when they stage the fight at the end, as an audience, particularly the kind of whoever was in the referee role would play it up, so they're encouraging the audience to hiss, boo, or cheer for whoever. And I remember the last time I saw it, which was in a theatre venue in the 80s, by then everything had got rather perverse. Everybody was deliberately going against the grain of the piece by booing Tansy and cheering on Dean Revel, which was a kind of different mode to when it first started out. So you have to kind of like imagine, and students used to love doing this piece, particularly if they could get actually hold of a wrestling ring and sort of do it in there and get us in that kind of a space. As I said, I chose it because it's hard to find something that captures the kind of feel, the consciousness-raising feel from that period. So it's one of the kind of remaining popular political pieces that we can actually look at to take us back to that moment. So with these prompts that I suggested to think about, can you again do the same thing just by turning around in the room like you did before? To focus on the prompts, to gauge reactions. You don't have to stick to the prompts. There might be other things you want to say about this performance in relation to any of the points raised this afternoon as we've set out. Does that make sense? Yes, nods. Okay, so we'll just take 10 minutes like that, and we'll have another round of sharing, and then we can wrap up for the day, okay? Right. Okay, so as we're running out of time now, I'm told, and I'll just take 1 second to thank people online for coming up with discussion points and that, and we're going to try and extract the comments that have been shared online so that we can look at them tomorrow and maybe feedback on that a bit. But for now, again, last bit of sharing from the round table discussions, just any quick headlines that have come up. I like one from over here where you're thinking about talking by the end, who is celebrating the win? I thought that was a really good question. I was just saying, if you saw it in the theatre in the earlier times when you had a kind of strong feminist contingent in the audience, you would have a kind of feminist celebration, but in the way that it's screened, it's left, who is supporting this working class woman who wins and no longer has to be a housewife, some kind of utopia there. Anything else that's come up? Well, they're all chatting away. Unless you were discussing where you're going for the evening instead of the performance, I don't know.
It's a very powerful play.
Yeah?
Very powerful.
It's kind of dated now, but as I say, it does give you a sense of that time and how popular political theatre can work in kind of raising an issue. Come on, let's have like... Right, I want 2 more comments before I let you go. Yay! Go on then. You want the mic?
So we were discussing amongst us, and there were one question that we had was, like you said, that towards after almost 2 decades of that performance, towards the end the audience sort of flipped. Yes. Was it because it had acquired, from going from a small production to a mainstream production and then TV, it had acquired a sort of its own fan base, and now they wanted to, because there are such rigid positions within the play, so they wanted to sort of audience wanted to add their own variety to it, or sort of make it a bit more interesting?
I don't think it was really a question of a fan base. It didn't have such a following in that way dedicated to performance. I think it was to do with the shift into the 80s and the change, the backlash against feminism. That's what was driving the different reaction. Because I remember the audience was quite young. I was there, I'd taken a group of theatre students, and the theatre was generally of a younger generations, and it was the backlash climate. It was hitting that post-feminism, don't want to do it, so it got, so the reversal was there. It was done in a semi-affectionate way, but it was still there, as in, we know we're saying the wrong, we know we're booing in the wrong places, but it was still there. That's what I would put it down to.
The other thing that we discussed is we understand that the timing of the play, the time, like the gap between how we see it now and how it is then. Some of the things that, like, say, using the metaphor of or of analogy of wrestling, sort of, in a way, sort of having two oppositions rather than a collective, uh, because the husband is also struggling with this whole domestic idea. He says that you're not there as a wife. So this gender roles that have been imposed on him, and he doesn't know how to get out of it, or the way she goes back to her parents. Komita said, like, in the end, she goes back to her parents despite having had a traumatic childhood.
Yeah, and I think one of the, in terms of, if you think about the feminist dynamics for a minute, I think it's predominantly in that bourgeois feminist terrain, this woman on top, woman wins out, okay? There's no solidarity between the women, which would take us into the radical feminist terrain. We do get a sense of a critique of objectification, because we get the ridiculous stereotypes, and the send-up of that. Slightly uncomfortable with the class stereotypes, because class isn't there, I think, well, in my view, class isn't there so much to pursue those kind of socialist issues around class as just the kind of working with those class-based and gender-based stereotypes in that arena to make the popular political piece. And so you're working with rather than really? You're working with those stereotypes. You're not challenging them, I guess, is what I would say. But the absence of solidarity, and that comes back to the who's celebrating at the end, I think is a key one. I'm doing all the talking again. Let's have, right, one more before we finish up.
As you have already mentioned that in that video, or the video we watched just now, the woman, or Trafford, did not have anyone to go back to in her vulnerable moments. In the very beginning, when she's 18, and she is very vulnerable because she's emotionally in not a good shape, because she has been beaten down by her own family because she wants to not marry so soon, or maybe wants to have a career. And then suddenly the guy comes in her life, this college heartthrob who's liked by all, but he only comes in her life when she's very sad and emotionally not in a perfect shape. And in the ring as well, when the match is being played, in the second round, I guess he uses this tactic once again. He tries to make her remember the time they had spent together as a good couple. They love each other, of course. They can't be doing this. And of course, for a moment, she also goes in that memory and loses her strength for a while and loses that round, the second round. It's completely based on emotional tactic. And I think it suggests one important thing for feminism, is because I remember reading Chimamanda Ngozi. She writes about it that feminists are seen as women who don't have any emotion, who can't love a man, who cannot remember the good time they had with the family, who cannot do anything that requires any sentimentality or compassion or empathy. But it's not true. They are very much humane in that sense. I think Gulikan, Ethics of Care, I'm forgetting the name of the person who writes about it. She said that they of course care, women care, but they are only trying to care a little more about themselves now. That's the only problem that people tend to have. And That's a good point. Actually, that's a good interjection in trying to negate all those ideas which are spreading around, vilifying women or vilifying feminists as those women who cannot have any notion of emotion for that.
Yeah, I'd also recommend on. I don't know if this is working or not. Is it? Is it? Sarah Ahmed and the idea of the figure of the feminist as a killjoy was actually and we on Wednesday I have got some time where will get us to talking about the image of the feminist and stereotypes. So I think this is going to kind of come circling back for us, absolutely. So that's very helpful. What there was one other well, yeah, the gaze. Anybody talk in the group about the gaze? That's what I was going to ask. Like the camera work. How does it work?
It depends on the setting of that social context and differs to continent, region to region. So gaze is not a construct that we can define that this is the gaze. It would be going to differ. I would say social context would going to have a factor.
Okay, so in this
I would
performance,
I think this, my fellow mate said that he clearly says that when she became in 18, so she was not confident enough of her body, and then she just had some kind of a confidence after some years. So that's the context that I'm trying to connect it.
Okay, and
we were also talking about that. First of all, she is constantly being sexualized because first there's a sweet 16, then when she's 18, and all of this is happening, and even within the form itself, within the wrestling and how the camera moves, and there's always a gaze, and they're also playing with this, and also within the play itself, there's always a gaze on her, and also we were thinking how the audience also plays into this because it's the form of a wrestling match. The audience is also pulled into this. We are also gazing at her in the same sense that the commentator or the referee is telling us yes, and how the camera is going. But that Nisha was also mentioning, but it's not only her, even the men are also sexualized in this to some extent, because even the referee is also, even the Dean Rebel character is very much hypersexualized, and even the commentator. So maybe it's also playing with the form of this popular form of wrestling.
And especially her mother. Her mother was also being sexualized first. The mother figure was being sexualized first. Before, when she fought with her daughter, she was also being sexualized, and when she came up, her dress up and how she carries, she puts up that you have to be like this and this, and how referee was gazing her mother during the win-win situation when she won, and how the referee was gazing towards her mother was like, you have to be this feminine. That's why your mother won, and you.
So the camera in that way does some of the looking at to be looked at-ness.
Yeah.
So it draws our attention to it. So you start to get a critical edge to it.
Mm.
Good. Fabulous. Okay, so we will go for round 2 tomorrow when we move on to looking at realism. Okay? Right. Thank you very much, and I see everybody tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow at 3. I'm told so 3. So we don't have the earlier start.